Pretty loud if you want to sit here.
I think so.
I just.
Oh,
Hello?
yeah. Yeah, if you're, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
No, I can hear
I
you.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
All right. Is this on? Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
Welcome everyone to our final session today. Thank you all for making it to the end of the day. I know there's been a lot of really good information going around, lots to think about. So thank you for sticking it out with us. Welcome to the final session, Student and Staff Connections, sharing best practices, enhancing the student experience. I'm Annie Lynn. I'll be the facilitator for today. I'm a case manager working with student case management services, student affairs, student affairs, case management service.
It's been a long day, Annie.
Yeah, it's been a long day. Lots of words. And I work with Ward and Revelle colleges. We have 4 wonderful panelists with us today. We have Martha, Kevin, Sarab, and Grace. So I will let our panelists begin introducing themselves. Let's start with Martha, if you wouldn't mind introducing what you do and what department you're in.
Thank you, Annie, and thanks for joining us today. It's wonderful to see you. My name's Martha. I'm the coordinator of the English Language Program for International Instructors, which is based in the Engage Teaching Hub at the Teaching and Learning Commons. And I've had the pleasure of being in this position for a very long time, seeing so many students through to their graduation. My specific role there is to implement the graduate division policy on English language for employment as a TA. However, I also work with faculty, postdocs, as well as the graduate students, teaching a variety of classes, not just for the TA-ship, but also for presentation skills in support of their communication and success as scholars. And that's me.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, next up we have Kevin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Baldueza, pronouns he, him, his. I am a case manager and outreach specialist for the graduate division. I also serve some undergraduate colleges such as 7th as well as Roosevelt at this moment. And my kind of role as being a case manager is, getting our students connected to, different resources on and off campus to have them be as successful as they can possibly be in their academic lives here at UCSD.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Sarab, would you like to go next?
Hey everyone, can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really nervous sitting right here, okay? I've never been in the spotlight, so.
Yay!
Thank you. So my name is Sarab Aziz. I am the events coordinator for the history department. I also am part of the EPIMED program representing the Middle Eastern. Can I do my spiel about my name right here?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Can you see my
Please
name
do.
up there? Oh, my name is not there.
It's right there.
That's
It's
right
right there.
Oh, it is actually everywhere. Okay, if you look at my name, it actually represents everything about me. If you drop the S and you read it, do you read it? Can you read it? It says in Arab, and I am an Arab. I'm an Arab woman from Syria, and S stands for Syrian. So put that together, you got my name set up. That's it.
Thank you. And not words. It's been a long day. Finally, we have Grace. Amazing Grace
Maybe
from
at least.
ISPO.
It's debatable. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Fuller. I use she, her pronouns. I have the honor of serving as the manager of International Student Experience and Engagement at the International Students and Programs Office. Before that, I also worked in the colleges working as the outreach coordinator for international and out-of-state students. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Alrighty, so before we get into the questions for our panelists, I thought we'd review a couple goals that we have planned for our session. So this includes bringing awareness to the multifaceted challenges our APIMED students face, to cultivate a discussion around how we can better serve APIMED students in their capacity as staff in order to create change at a system-wide level, to provide tangible and concrete resources to staff about how to better support APIMED students, and to create a learning community for participants to further share resources beyond this workshop. All right, so a little bit about our agenda. The first half will be devoted to our panel, asking questions to our panel, some case examples that they have kindly brought to the table today, some question and answers from the audience, and then if we have some time left at the end, we'll do an audience discussion. So you all will get a chance to discuss amongst yourselves the experiences that you've had on campus, and then at the end, a short reflection poll. So that's kind of the plan. So getting into the questions, the first question for our panel today is, in what ways do you or have you worked with international APIMED students? Does anyone like to start?
I can start.
Yeah.
So, serving as the graduate division case manager, I typically work with majority of international students, a lot of them being from, the APIMED community. When I work with them, I always typically, try to immerse myself in their culture as well, try to, ask different questions about where they're from, and so I can get a better understanding. And, I always feel like it never hurts to jump in and ask these questions with these students. I think it starts building that rapport. And that's how I kind of, work with these international APIMED students.
Are we going in turn?
You don't have to.
I actually don't work with lots of students on campus, but when I came in here to campus, I felt like I do not belong. So I try to talk to everybody and find out, where's everybody from? Do you know where am I from, and all that. So I feel like to be able to attract students and have them come and talk to me is to wear things that represent me. Like I'm wearing right now my nice pronoun earrings. Can you see them? I actually recently, when I volunteered an opportunity with APIMED hosting iftar in Ramadan, lots of those students were like, what? Wait, what? You speak Arabic? Where are you from? Oh gosh, your earrings are beautiful. And they just started talking, and one of them came to me and said, where are you from? And I asked, I said, I'm from Syria. She said, oh my gosh, I am Syrian too. Do you speak Arabic? And we went on with Arabic, and she just graduated, and I took a moment to just text her and say, congratulations, I'm very proud of you. And then she said, oh my gosh, you remember. That was very rewarding to me to help out. So I hope I can continue doing that. So if you ever have someone with the same background, please send them over to me. I'm more than happy to help.
I can maybe jump in. So I have the great privilege of a lot of my work being to get to work with APIMED international students. So I think Dulce shared earlier that 89% of our international students are from APIMED regions. Half of all of our graduate students are international students. I actually just recently attended NAFSA, which is the Professional Association for International Education. And it's pretty wild because when you're meeting different folks from different institutions, they are kind of amazed that our office is called the International Students and Programs Office, and that we would have positions on our campus that's actually dedicated to student experience and engagement. And so I think that there's a lot of privilege there and a lot of opportunity, that internationalization wouldn't just be relegated to certain offices, but across campus. The fact that we are like number 7 in the nation for hosting international student populations is incredible, and I think such a privilege. So I feel really fortunate to get to do the work that I do and get to work with all of you all to do that.
And the way that I engage with the international students on this campus, and APIMED students in particular, is via the employment test. I meet them on their way to becoming a TA so they can get that fee remission, and so that they can experience what it's like to teach our undergraduate students. I do support them in getting their skill set to that place, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful position, primarily because I get to meet people who, like me, maybe struggle a bit with their identity, especially when they come to a campus the size that UCSD is, and they're so far away from home. I like to talk about identity. I think it's incredibly important. I am the daughter of immigrant parents. My mother was Japanese. My father was German. My father got citizenship by voluntarily joining the military. And my entire life I grew up hearing people say, "Speak English, I don't understand you." And as a child, you don't realize that your parents have accents. At least I didn't. And I think I was rather destined for my career, because after a while it made me feel very uncomfortable that so many people didn't understand my parents. So I feel really lucky that I've had the career that I have at UC San Diego. I meet the most amazing, beautiful people. I get to support our students into employment as a TA, and I get to support faculty as well as postdocs into positions that they interview for, and they understand the interview process now. As Grace pointed out, there's another key word today, privilege. I feel very privileged to meet and support such amazing students and staff and faculty.
Thank you all for your responses. The second question that we have for you is, what are some common challenges and/or barriers that you have seen or have been expressed to you in your work with international EPIMED students? Who would like to start?
Guess I'll start again. So one of the challenges, specifically when I meet with students, is typically over Zoom. So not having the best hearing and what the students are able to say, especially if English is their second language. Like, there's definitely some language barriers that I've had to deal with when working with students. In particular, well, I'll save it for the case study. But yeah, so there's definitely been some language barriers. There's definitely been some financial barriers, specifically with international students. Knowing that it was brought up earlier in the day where they have to financially prove that they're able to pay for, I believe it's one full academic year here. So those are typically the barriers that I see in my line of work, and I'm kind of curious to see what barriers everyone else sees.
All eyes on me again. I always thought about putting myself in their shoes. How do I feel when I turn around and everything is weird, everything is strange, everything I don't know anything. So I just put myself in that feeling. What can I do to help them? Just simple, hi, how are you today? May I help you? That's how I start. Thank you.
And echoing what we've already heard, the challenges that our students face when they're comfortable enough to open up to you. In cases for the students that I work with, I have the privilege of meeting them, the graduate students anyway, as they're being onboarded in September. Just before everything starts, I teach a summer bridge program. And I always ask them, what do you need? And the things that they need are basic needs. Their lives are being moved here, and they don't have what they need to cook. And they don't have what they need to set up the comfort that they're used to make where they're living a home. And so that's where we direct them. I direct them to basic needs, the food pantry, and we direct them to places they might want to go to visit. I know the beach is very popular. But we really do want them to feel like home, and to the grocery stores where they're going to find the foods that they recognize. And so that's a part of the Bridge program, even though its main purpose is to prepare them for the TA-ship. But more than that, it's about establishing belonging, community, meeting each other before the brutality of a quarter system begins. That week 3 trauma is real. So that's another challenge. Before they know it, they're behind. So hopefully by starting early in a Bridge program, we can alert them to where they might find disorientation in their lives, and therefore provide them with the resources they need so it's not as severe as it potentially can be. And these are among just a few of the challenges that they experience, especially in the first quarter that they're here.
So I kind of wanted to go last because when I hear this question, I feel like 20 different things like pop into my mind. In some ways, it feels like anything an international student does, there are additional steps and processes that they have to go through, right? So let's say a student wants to drop a class and have like a lower course load. Sure, they should talk to their advisor, and they need to get a reduced course load from our office. Let's say a student wants to take a leave of absence. Maybe things are going on at home. Yes, they have to go through a normal process that a domestic student needs to go through, and they need to go through additional processes as an international student. The same applies for an internship. The same applies for post-graduation employment. I don't know if any of you had the chance to attend, but at our student panel, a student actually shared, in response to the question, what is one thing you wish staff and faculty knew about your experience? The student shared that they wish that staff and faculty knew like just how many obstacles they need to navigate and just how hard like they want to be here. And they demonstrate that through their commitment, through going through and adjusting to all these barriers and all these obstacles. And the student led that would, I think, lead to a more compassionate advising, compassionate student holistic support, and having that sense of awareness. So I feel like when I see this question, I'm like, and I'm not even like touching the pandemic, when immigration regulations changed on a monthly basis, and students like were fine in March 2020, and then in July, it was only if they were in an in-person class. Who was offering in-person classes in July of 2020? Like, it's wild, not to mention presidential administrations and rhetoric, and I think there's so much there that I like almost don't know where to begin, but I think it's a testament, right, to the resiliency of our students and the fact that they're here and yeah, what that demonstrates.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more time during the case examples to go over some more of those challenges. So the next question is, how do you help students navigate those challenges? And I know we've touched on that a little bit already, but if you can expand a little bit more, give some examples maybe, appreciate it.
We're just gonna go down the line.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
We have a good thing going. We have a good thing going.
Well, I mean, some of these answers are kind of tied into with my case study, but so as far as, you know, a student that I was working with the language barrier, you know, I was kind of hard of like understanding what the student was saying because of the language barrier. So we kind of navigated that by having the student kind of type their responses in the Zoom chat, which definitely helped. You know, because I didn't want to make the student kind of feel almost embarrassed of me kind of asking over and over again, oh, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? So we were able to kind of navigate that way. As far as some of the financial challenges that, you know, I've seen with international APIMED students specifically, again, you know, there are definitely a lot of challenges when working with these international students financially, because again, they kind of have to prove that they're able to financially support themselves here in the US. Thankfully, you know, UCSD, my team at Student Affairs Case Management, we do have a financial crisis response team where, you know, there are these you know, emergency grants that we can kind of request for these students to kind of get by these different financial hardships that they're having at the moment. But, you know, as far as it being a more sustainable kind of financial solution. That's something that we're still kind of in the works of. As far as, the financial crisis response team, it's more of, I hate using this term, but it's almost kind of like a Band-Aid solution for like that moment, that specific financial hardship. So that's how I kind of navigate, those specific areas. But again, I always try to work on working with other departments to see if there's other financial opportunities for this student to kind of help mitigate those financial hardships that they're currently facing.
So again, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I can share what happened when I first came into my department and then how that inspired me to actually put myself out there to help our students. First time I was like temping in the Department of History, and I walk into the mail room and there was a professor standing right there, and he goes, are you the new person? I said, yeah, my name is Sarab Aziz, I'm here to help, and I'm just sorting out the mail. And he looks at me, he said, AZ is your last name? I said, yeah. He said, do you know SympoisumEESAPIMED? And I kid you not, that's my sister's name. And I'm like, are you referring to that person who is in Syria, Damascus, that works for the US Embassy? He says, that's exactly the same person I'm talking to. I'm like, oh, that is my sister. It happened that that professor was a Fulbright in Damascus for a few years, and my sister helped him. What a small world. So I took that story to inspire me to help my students, and I spoke to my professor and I said, if there was any need that any of our students, undergraduate or graduate students, that they come in here and they don't know anyone, would you please send them over my way? I would love to help. There was an incident that a young graduate student that came my way, she was from Lebanon. As soon as I greeted her in Arabic, she was, oh my gosh, you speak Arabic, let me tell you my story. And she sat there and talked about all these obstacles we're talking about and all these culture shock that you go through that you're not aware of until you actually go through it, right? So I kind of made myself available to my students to listen to them when they want to talk, and this is it.
Okay, I don't have a story like that at all. So I have to admit that a part of the work that I do in implementing the policy on employment serves as another barrier in the process for these students. And so what I typically do, many of the students will get a fee remission when they qualify to TA, or they will get a salary. They will meet some kind of requirement that they have as graduate students. And to support them in this, we do offer ways in which that they can understand what they're going to do in the test. They can come to me and practice for this test. I will support them as much as I can. A way that I do support them is by reminding the grad division, which, by the way, at one point there had been so many new deans in a very short period of time that you really do have to give grace to let people who are new to the university learn about the university. So I waited about 1 minute as opposed to a half a minute to knock on the door and say, you have this policy. It is old. It needs to be addressed. And the policy, by the way, is an employment policy specifically written for the University of California. Tom Hayden wrote the original legislation, and if you recognize that name, yes, he was one of the Chicago 7, was in a documentary recently, and it's old, this policy. And so it starts with the state of California. The state of California in 2001, I did not vote for this, but others did, and they voted English as the official language of the state of California. And when the graduate students of UCSD voted to be represented by a union, this policy became concrete. And every year I have had to chip away at it as we become modern in the 21st century. We're almost 25 years into it. So I do represent the students in negotiations with the graduate division about how we revise this policy, how we move forward. All of the UCs have a similar policy, and how we implement it, though, can vary. And so for me, it's annually, every year, I let them know, I make suggestions, I work closely with departments to see how we can reduce the barrier for access to employment so it doesn't burden the students with financial trauma. How will I pay for school? These are things that, in my position, that I am obligated to do, to remind our administrators that policies need to be addressed. I write weekly to the governor of California. I get responses now, reminding them that this policy exists and that something needs to be done. We are modern. We understand people travel everywhere. There are accents, they are beautiful. I grew up with them, you learned that today. And therefore, how do we support them to make it easier to access employment? And these are the things that I work on. These are the challenges. And I think learning about these types of policies is one step closer to reducing the barrier, because now you've learned that there is this policy and that there's a way to express how you feel change would support our students.
Yeah. I think first off, I need to uplift the work of my ISPO colleagues. Like, they're the real deal, y'all. So first of all, just when you think about all those things I just mentioned, like a reduced course load or leave of absence or internship CPT, like post-employment OPT, whatever it might be, like, yeah, I think that just acknowledging that, but then also it's the work that we do together, right? So I think knowing the different allies and activists you have across campus. Like even Martha's an incredible partner, because I have students who come to me and say, yes, I've demonstrated my first year of funding, but there's no way I'm gonna get a TA because my accent's too thick, so I'm not gonna get hired. And to know that I can send them to Martha, and she hosts our pre-arrival webinars for our students, and Martha will be in that webinar and say that an accent is a sign of bravery. Like, that matters, right? It matters for our incoming students to see that and to hear that, or to know that international students don't qualify for federal funding, but I can work with student case management services and know that we have iTable, know that we can advocate for specific funding that then funds some of these, or I can nominate a student for financial crisis response team review, and we can come together, but it is the work that we do together. I think earlier in a student panel, one of our students, Christina, uplifted some of the social justice conversations she was able to have through the Marshall Doc program. And like, shout out to Amanda Solomon. And just like some of this incredible work that one of our advisors, David, did an I Thrive social justice series for international students, because understandably, a lot of the conversations are contextualized to the US, right? But how do we create spaces where international students are able to ask questions and participate in these conversations? And that was working with a lot of you all across campus. It was working with different groups and having them come facilitate those sessions on a weekly basis. So I think the work that we do together is how we help students navigate the challenges. And if we don't do the work together, then I think we're doing a disservice to our students.
Yes, definitely. So again, this question was covered a little bit earlier in some of the answers, but are there common resources that you refer students to? And if so, like where do you refer them to? How do you do that? It could be on or off campus resources. Anyone like to start?
Well, for me, for international students, my main resource is ISPO.
Yeah.
They have a lot of the answers that I don't have for the students. So, I typically connect with, someone from ISPO to see if I can have some questions answered that I can relay to the student, or I'll, typically get them connected directly with someone from ISPO. But yeah, ISPO specifically for the international students portion, ISPO is the place to go. So clap it up for ISPO one more time. Yeah.
Why are you laughing? No, I'm just
I'm not fine. I'm so sorry. I'm just nervous.
Me too, man. I can't tell you how much. Anyway, again, because I don't have a lot of experience in this field, but I take the time to train myself as a staff member to all of the centers that's available on campus to direct our students to. Of course, I first go send them to our advisor, and then I spoke. And then, but if they have any questions about food, do you have time? I can tell you all about my food. Thank you.
Well, and for me, because I do work with history grad students, I now know who's an ally in the history department. So coming out to events like this really help us to identify more resources. I also assemble a list of resources for the students that do come to me. And so I have that available as a PDF for them. Essentially what I do is identify the free resources because they don't need additional fees. And then I identify the fee-based resources. And I do work with departments, especially departments that have money. And I think they wouldn't appreciate if I gave you that list of who has the money. But
We need that list.
I let them know. I say, here's an extension class that would benefit your international student. And this class now costs, at extension, $500. What can you do to support your student because this person is going to be a TA for your department? This person would benefit from this class. Can you cover it? And they cover it. So it takes a lot to put yourself out there, to make an ask. It's worth it to ask because the only thing that you'll be told that's would be disappointing is the no, and they say yes. So these are the things that I think have really helped the students to identify what's free for them, and then to keep connecting them with those who have agency to give a yes.
Yeah, when I think of this question, I think of just continuing to deepen our relationships with folks across campus. And so I'm thinking, I think one of the session presenters earlier today talked about how does the international office on a campus continue to collaborate with the campus resource centers, and just some really incredible collaboration there. And it's exciting to think about. I think for the iThrive series, each week was in collaboration with a different resource center. I believe that Christina, a student leader, was one of the student leaders for one event that we had was addressing anti-Asian hate and exploring the international student experience with that. But then I'm also thinking of housing, and when a student comes to the US and let's say they don't get on-campus housing, they also don't have a social security number, which means they don't have a credit score, which means they're at a disadvantage. I think knowing that, I saw Cameo here earlier today, hey, but that's an incredible resource because we have her office come and talk about, here are some really helpful tools to navigate and find housing opportunities that are actually available to you. And the last thing I'll say is uplifting the work of students. And so Hugs is a startup started by international students from UCSD that offer housing opportunities for international students without the need for a credit score. So that's like work for students by students. I'm thinking of our Surf Check guide, which is literally created by students, and it addresses everything from what to pack to arranging transportation from the airport to campus, like to setting up your US bank account, setting up your US phone account, like all of these things that students have to think about as they're also like changing cultures and stepping down in the US potentially for the first time. It's the work that's created by these students that is then for those students that I think is really powerful. So how do we uplift the work of our students and acknowledge them for that and pay them for that, but really acknowledge the incredible work that's being done there too.
Oh, can I add one more thing? Because you reminded me. We also have student organizations on campus. And so when I learned that some of my students are leaders within these orgs or members of these organizations, then I connect those students as well. Those peer-to-peer connections are super important as well. And our student orgs are amazing. They immediately take on you're one of us, so what do you need? We're going to help you get what you need.
Thank you, Martha. So the final question we have for panelists today is, what gaps in resources or unmet needs have you observed? How do you think we can help bridge these gaps as staff and as a higher education institution? So actually, I guess that's two questions. Who would like to start with that?
We have a good thing going.
Yeah.
Well,
No pressure.
yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of gaps when working with a lot of, specifically international students. A lot of their basic needs might not be met, at the certain time when you meet with this student. I think it's one of the gaps is potentially that, the student might not know that there are resources are available to them. So potentially like advertising it a little more, or the way that we market ourselves. I think that might be a gap of, as far as, the student might not know that these resources are there for them. We're here to help them. We're here to assist in any way that we can. So I think that is one thing that as an institution we can probably do a little bit better at, even though I know we do as much as we can. Just making sure that, when the student touches down here in the US, letting them know that there are these resources here available for them if there are anything that comes up about hardships, whether it be basic needs, financial, housing, that there are places that they can turn to when they're here at our university. I'm sorry.
Kind of forgot the question right now. I don't know, I'm trying to think, I don't know if I have a story for this question. I really can't think of anything besides just when I see some of our students, I just take a moment to ask them, how's your day? How are you doing? I don't know, sometimes just pay for their coffee makes all the difference. Because to me as a staff member, I don't see enough representation within my background, the Middle Eastern. And I'm like, if I see an something Arabic, I'm like, oh my gosh, wait. So I do have a story. I recently just participated in the Try and Transfer, day, and I just volunteered, or maybe my boss made me do that. And then lots of students came into our booth, and then I saw this family with some Arabic writing on the sweatshirt of the mom. I'm like, oh, I have an opportunity to say something. So I ran after her and said, hi, I'm Sarab. I'm from Syria. Do you speak Arabic? And that's how it started. She just texted me a couple days ago to say her student just got accepted at UCSD. She wants to come to San Diego, but she's not able to be with her daughter on campus. I said, have her come to me and I'll feed her when she needs to be fed. So just little things like that, just ask, check on everybody, and that's it.
In terms of some of the things that I already mentioned about how connected we are in our work, which is absolutely necessary. So I do work with all of the departments that hire TAs, so that's an enormous network. I also work with staff in those departments, so that increases my network. I work with faculty, and so I know a lot of people who have agency, and all that's required to support someone is to contact that agent and say, this is what we need, can you support? And I've never heard no. We have a generous campus, and every person you meet could be an agent for something that one of your students needs. And so it's important to keep that network moving even during Zoom. I know when one of my students moved here, they had no kitchen utensils, so I grabbed mine and said, here are some utensils. For some reason, I'm often gifted kitchen appliances. And so I was happy to contribute to someone else's kitchen. And so it's this kind of networking and feeling comfortable reaching out on behalf of someone else in need that will keep the giving moving forward and providing everything that we can to support the students who really do want to be successful and really do need our support in that success in ways we perhaps never thought we would support them.
I think for me, two things come to mind. So the first would be like better understanding the international student experience. So understanding that our APIMED international students are not a monolith, no group is. So to understand the intersectional identities, to understand the stereotype of, oh, like international students come from a certain socioeconomic status. We have many students who their families pool together their funding for their first year to demonstrate that document, and then they're really hopeful / reliant on getting a TA position later, right, in order to continue their studies. Or different dimensions of identity. And these students might be exploring these different dimensions of identity as they arrive to UC San Diego, like many of our domestic students. I don't think that's relegated to a certain international student identity, but creating these spaces where students can do that. I also think almost ensuring access to high impact practices and then reviewing the barriers that come with students trying to pursue some of these high impact practices. So I'm thinking of our students who want to pursue study abroad, who want to pursue certain research or internship opportunities, but there are some real logistical barriers that often get in the way of them pursuing some of those opportunities. And so what are ways that we can create more pathways to success for those high impact practices for our students?
Thank you all for your responses. So we're going to move on to some case examples. I believe Kevin is up first again.
Of course. So, that's cool. Just go off the top of the head. So, this student actually came to me through one of our basic needs assistance forms. He is of Indian descent, and, first off, when I met with this student, this was one of the examples where there was kind of a language barrier. It was kind of hard for me to kind of understand this student through Zoom. So in this instance, I actually had him type out his responses, and it made the meeting go a lot smoother. He was presenting with financial hardships. This student did fortunately had a TA position, but he also had a spouse here with him. Unfortunately, the spouse was unable to, work in the U.S., so he was kind of taking care of, all of the finances and within his family. He was finding it hard for him to kind of provide food for his family and stuff. So we did get him connected to, basic needs, the Triumph Food Pantry. We got him connected to ISPO for the iTable form. So that was kind of, covered. But then he also had trouble in transportation. Him and his wife did not have, a form of transportation. They were spending hundreds of dollars on Uber and Lyft monthly, which was, taking out of what they were able to provide for themselves. So, we put in a financial crisis response request for this student and his spouse to get a bus pass so they're able to, commute around the San Diego County and everything. So, that was our first meeting, and then I did a follow-up with the student to kind of see how everything's going, if he was able to get connected to all these different departments, which he was able to. And then he presented with another concern of his, which was that his wife was uninsured. So we kind of spent the rest of that follow-up meeting kind of helping him go through, I believe it's the CalWIN benefits website, to kind of get his wife situated with healthcare through Medi-Cal. And it's been a few months since the last time I met with this student, but the last time I met with him, he was doing well. He was thriving in his academics. Unfortunately, again, with the piece of his wife unable to work in the U.S., there's still that kind of financial hardships that they do, fall into every once in a while, but they were ultimately connected with some different departments, such as basic needs and ISPO, so they can kind of help mitigate some of those hardships that they were facing at the moment.
Thank you, Kevin.
Of course.
So I think next up we have Martha, her case study.
Yes, so this is one case that's related to well-being. So this was an APIMED graduate student that I met very briefly. I was not his instructor, but one of my colleagues was. And later, after we met, he sent me an email, and he had qualified to TA, and he asked me to review his recording of his TA class, and could we meet to debrief the recording? And I said, yes, of course, I'm happy to watch the recording. I watched the recording, I reviewed it and went through it. And then I contacted him and said, okay, I'm ready, let's meet. Because his main question was, how's my teaching? Which is a pretty big question, so I knew I would have to ask more questions. Can you look at the next slide? And so what you're seeing here is is that everything? Oh, yeah. Oh, no, because what I'm seeing is the full slide, so keep it there. We will click and more will pop up. So the main question is, how's my teaching? And so what I do is I go in through, and this is part of case study presentation. The first thing that we do is think about support, the allyship, reaching out. So the student knows I'm an ally. And I will always protect their privacy. So, contact me, I will support you. And then we go through the strategy. And the strategy in supporting the student is to listen and to acknowledge what's happening, and then to affirm by saying, yes, this is something I'm going to help you with. And then the case itself and reviewing the recording. We know by research, which informs the analysis, what great teaching is. And so when I go through the recording, I'm not listening to English. And by the way, I don't teach English. I teach how to communicate clearly. There's a huge distinction in that. Because by doing that, they have greater success passing the language test, and especially being successful as a TA. So we focus on what everyone has to demonstrate to be clear as a presenter. There's nothing special there. Everyone could benefit from being a better communicator. And so I focused on, was there framework? Was there context? I focused on simple language so I could understand the concepts and ideas and learn the technical vocabulary. I also listened for, directness, rather than indirect approaches. So going through this list, was there engagement? Were there posed questions? Different things that we know make for successful teaching. And they were all there. And I thought, what's going on with this? So then we look at the data, and so I sent an email. I said, well, do you have feedback from your students? Have you been getting any kind of informal feedback, like a 1-minute paper at the end of the class saying what was the muddiest point? You know, checking in with the students, and he had done so. And then the final key in all of this is what I ask the student to do. I ask a lot of questions, and that's interrogation, but in a kind way, not a police interrogation. And it is the idea of asking questions to guide the reflection, and to get them to recognize how they're going to be able to assess how well they're doing because they're thinking about how they're teaching. So it's the idea of thinking about what you know and how well you know it. And so this is the approach that we use in this case. And so, oops, not that one. Did we get to everything? No, click. There's an arrow, cloud. So what he was really after was not how's my teaching, but am I enough in my teaching? And the reason that he wanted to know that was because every time he spoke with the instructor had an approach of what I call the yes buts. Yes, you're doing great, but maybe you should try this. And so every time the student got a yes but, he felt he was failing. He felt that something was wrong because culturally in his country, with the faculty he worked with at home, you don't get a yes but, you get a yes. And so culturally here, we get a suggestion for always how to be better. And for this student, the message he was getting was he was failing, he was not enough. He was very emotional in the meeting that I had with him. More emotional when I told him his teaching was outstanding, that it hit every marker of success, and that I had a suggested feedback for him to do before we met, but they were going to send the feedback to me. And when I showed him the feedback, he was amazed because the feedback supported what I had told him about his teaching. So if we do one more click, oh yeah, no, not that one. Back, imposter syndrome. So when the students come to UCSD, because I meet them before they start their program, their greatest fear is that they are not enough. They are wondering. They have always been successful. And then they hit these barriers and they start to doubt themselves, and that impacts their well-being so deeply. And therefore, it's the idea for me to know and educate myself on all of the ways in which they succeed in education, and therefore providing them with that same formula of feedback to say, yes, great, keep doing it, as opposed to the yes, but let's take it higher. And in that respect, we are protecting our students' well-being by affirming that they're doing well, and then letting them come to us when they have doubts, rather than giving a doubt. to them. And I always let them know, and I started with that today in my introduction, identity matters so much, and they are fully formed when they get here. And if there's something that they need, regardless of what that need is, we will support them to get that need fulfilled. And to remind them that there are multiple ways that we show up in this world at UCSD, ways that we show our knowledge, and anything that registers, resonates, is direct, and contributes to a student's success means that their way of showing that knowledge, their way of teaching that knowledge, that's success. There's not just one route to that. And we talk about assumptions and how they're made and how to handle them. But the assumption about the self of I am not enough needs to be addressed, needs to be supported, and you've used the word a lot today, uplifted. I always introduce myself to the students. We are Tritons, each and every one of us, when it comes down to it. And therefore, as a member of the Triton community, we are here to make sure you achieve the highest level of success. And that's my case study for today.
Thank you, Martha. That was very powerful. I think we have Grace's two
Yeah,
cents.
I put too much. I don't even know if I'm gonna go into all of it because it's a lot, and I feel like in some ways we've touched on some of this stuff. So instead, I actually just kind of hearing what folks have shared. I'm thinking of two case studies that I'll just kind of share. So one, I'm thinking about a student earlier in our day today at the student panel who was sharing that they had never talked about LGBT plus at all. And the first time they were ever given the chance to explore that was coming to UC San Diego. And so I think, and then that was actually echoed and resonated by a few other students on that panel. So I think acknowledging and allowing for that diversity of cultural context in some of that identity exploration, and meeting with students who had waited to come out until they were at UC San Diego, one to later seek asylum, because it was literally, and so I think understanding appreciating the diversity of that experience, and how do we, as you can see, I'm totally verbally processing here, partner or work with students to understand that they're coming from such diverse backgrounds, and we all are, right? We're all people of diverse backgrounds, but what are ways we can better understand that and create these spaces? I'm also thinking of the long history of student advocacy on this campus, and not to put the onus or burden on students, but I earlier referenced the event addressing anti-Asian hate and exploring the international student experience, and then I recently saw Saint, I don't know if she's still here, but at that event she had talked about, so Saint had talked about creating this podcast to further explore different APIMED international student experiences as a part of activism. And I saw her right before the session, and the podcast is up and running. Yes, that's incredible. The podcast is called Love Immigrant. I encourage everyone here to give it a follow. But again, I think just understanding the incredible diversity of our students, of all of our students, and really understanding ways that we can honor that and really partner with them to acknowledge that. Yeah. So I'm just going to say that instead of my case examples.
No worries. Thank you so much, Grace. Well, we are almost out of time here, so I want to open it up to the audience if they have any questions for our panelists before we wrap up. No question? Oh, there's a question back there. Okay.
Yeah, this student was living on campus in Grand Family Housing.
Any other questions? Yes.
I would love to meet you after this session. And keep an eye out. Let's connect. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, I come from a social work background, so that kind of like ties in when I work with students, not just international students, but just all students that I work with, looking at it through the social work lens, coming at it from a holistic place where, you know, we want to make sure that all their basic needs are being met so they can be as successful as possible here at UCSD. I mean, that's just, I know Annie right here is a social worker as well.
Yeah, I'm a social worker as well, so if you have questions about that, anyone, happy to answer them. Anyone else wanted to add to that, or?
She has a question.
Oh, okay. Yes.
If you want to answer, I can ask my question afterwards.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I know Gracie briefly touched upon looking at anti-Asian hate from an international lens. So I guess kind of related to kind of the social justice issues, how we talk about it in the U.S. context. How would you recommend kind of navigating, keeping a pulse on international issues happening and how that's impacting students here? Because I know especially in a lot of APIMED countries right now, they're experiencing a lot of different political issues, and that's definitely been affected in impacting students here and their basic needs and just navigating academics too with all that kind of pressure from countries back home.
Yes. There's so much there. Oh gosh. So the question is how would I check in with students, or?
Yeah, I guess one, how do you keep a pulse on that? Because it's a lot. It's a broad group of people that we're talking about.
Yes.
And then two, how do you acknowledge that and support the students in those multifaceted ways that they're experiencing different intersections of issues.
Oh man, I don't know if I am by any means the expert or paragon to speak to that. I think that I'm definitely human in my learning and striving. I think that, but to understand that we live in a global world, and there are all of these things happening all over the world that have very real implications for our students. And so, in addition to doing my own work of just being a part of this world and understanding the different things that are happening, I think even living abroad, some of my first times of realizing of you know more about our politics than I do. You know what I mean? I'm from the US and you're not. Kind of opened my eyes to just how much learning I needed to do. But honestly, I think for me, it's not being afraid to ask the student of hey, this is happening, and you can pass this, but I want to acknowledge it and give you the chance, how are you doing? Is that affecting you? And I for sure had students who are pass, not super interested in discussing that with you, which I think is very fair and I think is important to allow space for. But I've also had students who are yeah, I'd actually love to talk about that, because I think that UC San Diego has done an incredible job of allowing a lot of these conversations in a lot of different areas. And so as students are starting to do some of their identity work and then starting to learn more about systems and systems of privilege and oppression, we have very intelligent students. And so they're making connections between systems of privilege and oppression and things that they're seeing in the US, as well as things that they're seeing in their home countries. And they're tying those connections. And so I think oftentimes even just acknowledging that and naming it and allowing them to respond actually gives them the space to share. And I think some of their insights are incredible, because I, as a US American, have such a US-centric perspective, and they're actually able to tie in implications that I'm not even thinking about. So I think for me, it's almost some of that bravery to talk about it, because I think I can get nervous of oh gosh, am I gonna force you to talk about this with me, and maybe you don't really want to, because I have a ton of privileged identities and I'm not totally sure how that's gonna inform and affect our space. But I think asking students about it and allowing the chance for them to pass, but then for them to also go there. A lot of the times I've seen that be powerful of like, hey, you are actually aware of this and you actually care. So I think your intentionality of that like speaks volumes, and the bravery to do so.
Thanks, Grace. Well, so I think we're a little over time now, so sorry about that. But would you all join me in a round of applause for our amazing panelists? Thank you all so much. Yeah, we truly appreciate everything you all do for our campus and for our students. Y'all are awesome.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you all so much for joining us today in the audience. And yeah, I guess we're the last session of the day, right? I think.
Come back tomorrow. They have an
Yes,
incredible
please
day
lot
come
more
planned.
back. We would love to see you.
Yes. Thank you.
One last round of applause for the panel, as well as Annie for facilitating. So just right before we head out, I do want to kind of say a few things in closing for today. Just again, as Annie mentioned, thank you all for coming this first day of the symposium, this inaugural symposium. It's been a great kind of learning space, and I feel like there's been a lot of people talk about how, they've gotten a lot out of the morning sessions, out of the afternoon, out of the panel itself. So, I think it's exciting to see so many people come through and kind of be able to embrace this learning kind of mindset that we were hoping for. So again, thank you all. Round of applause for yourselves for being able to participate. One of the things that I want to also mention is, I think that, sorry, I have a few notes here because I wanted to just do like a brief summary of today, right? So I know we started in the morning with Wayne, as well as our other speakers with Dr. Lee and Dr. Yao, kind of talking about historical context and how some of these things impact the lens that students are having, or the lens that they have as they experience the campus, right? And even Grace kind of mentioned in the panel, right? Like being able to acknowledge that and kind of understand and give them space to explore those identities that they maybe hadn't had a chance to do so, I think kind of ties in really nicely with what Wayne was talking about with, the United States being this country that racializes students in ways that they may not have even expected when they first come to this country, or as domestic students realizing it in different ways once they come to the university, right? So I think as we continue on in our learning, thinking about how that impacts the students, but also how that might impact the work that you're doing with students, right? So what part of their identity might they still need to continue to explore, right? What part of the population are these students in? And how can we be intentional for them, right? So I think Christina Yao in the extra session after her keynote mentioned something about finding ways to get programming for international students and domestic students, and not necessarily having to like kind of draw those lines, but just having it be students in general, right? But also, how can we be intentional for the people and the populations that we really want to reach out to, right? So we mentioned before in the beginning with data, and there are these like really small populations that don't necessarily get as much visibility. So what can we do to kind of uplift them and be intentional with those students, while also kind of making sure that it's something that's accessible, right? It's a hard ask, and it's something that I don't have the answer to, kind of similar to what Christina Yao was mentioning earlier. If I did, I could make my rounds and make a whole lot of money at that if I had that answer, but I don't, right? And I think that's something that we can all kind of collectively build together. So again, thank you all for participating. Ooh, eating the mic. Thank you all for participating in these sessions and kind of reflecting on these things, but also keep going, keep reflecting. I'm a big reflection person, and we had a couple breaks here and there, but if you need to take a few moments now to like write something down, take some notes or something, or just kind of think quietly to yourself, feel free to do that, right? Because I think that we're not going to be able to continue moving forward if we don't have the time to kind of process and think about how we're going to actionalize some of the stuff that we've been able to take from today. Okay, I know that was a really short time for reflection, so feel free to take more if you need to. after I'm done speaking, which is going to be in about a couple minutes, so don't worry, I'm not going to talk your ear off. You can continue to sit and keep with your reflection if you need to. A couple other last things that I want to mention. So tomorrow is day 2 of the symposium, the last day. We are going to be focusing a little bit more on the domestic student experiences, right? So today we focused a lot on our international students. Tomorrow is our domestic student kind of focused day. So we're excited to see all of you come through. I know some of you may not be able to make it. If that's the case, let me make sure I get my notes correctly. We just wanted to say, again, thank you for showing up and coming through. Be on the lookout for a survey that's going to be coming out. Again, if you're going to be here tomorrow, you heard me say very similar things. But if you're not going to be here tomorrow, please be on the lookout for a survey. We're going to do a follow-up with folks and just kind of get some feedback on the symposium in general, but then also kind of get a gauge on what are some things that you were able to take away from the symposium, right? So I really encourage you to take that time to reflect. If not here, then maybe at home, talk about it with a loved one, family member, a pet, if that's what you need to do to process it. But yes, and then very, very last promise, there's still some extra food in the back. So if you need to take that extra food for yourself, your friends, your family, that same pet that you might be referencing later today, feel free to go ahead and do that. But again, thank you all for showing up for this first day. I hope I see you tomorrow, and if I don't see you tomorrow, I hope you have a great rest of your week.